Our planet is so intensively researched and watched by satellites from the orbit that there seems to be little space left for real discoveries. One of the last white spots on the map of the world is the Bird's Head Peninsula of New Guinea. If you look from the orbit onto the western tip of New Guinea, the landscape resembles the head of a bird. Our journey leads us first to Sorong. From there, we sail in southerly direction towards the big island of Misol. The dive spots at the eastern coast of this island are among the best that Indonesia has to offer. From there, we try to get to the island of Koon after night crossing, and after another night we hope to reach the Momon waterfall, where the water falls directly from the shore into the sea. Only then we will have reached our destination, the remote and yet unexplored Triton Bay. A huge and beautiful bay with many small coral islets and stunning underwater landscapes. At the end of our voyage, we will have sailed more than 1,000 nautical miles. We will be the only visitors of remote bays and pristine beaches only few people have visited before us. We will admire waterfalls and will watch rare underwater animals. Every now and then, we will hit on relics of a mysterious past. Above water, birds of paradise live in the rainforests. Since 2006, however, we have known that below the surface of the sea, marine biodiversity is outstanding. Here, marine scientists have discovered only a few years ago the center of marine biodiversity in the world. Nowhere else on our planet so many different species of marine animals can be found as in the waters of the Bird's Head Sea. Our first destination are the Daram Islands to the east of Misol Island in the south of the Bird's Head. Here, the sea is so rich in marine life that during a single dive, more marine species can be seen than in the whole of the Caribbean. Until today, 1,628 different species of fish have been identified, and 75% of all known coral species can be found in this area, measuring 4,500 square kilometers. These are the information marine biologists tell us in their papers. For us non-scientists, the most impressive experience, however, are the huge schools of fish which do not seem to take notice of us divers at all. This is a clear sign that very little fishing activities are taking place here. We are able to come very close to the fish. Enormous schools of batfish, snappers and fusiliers are passing by, and we are literally in the middle of them. An unforgettable experience. There are even some small white-tip reef sharks and barracudas around. A perfect dive. Above water, conditions have changed dramatically during our dive. There is a storm coming up and we have only a short time to watch small hawksbill turtles trying to reach the water. Even though the weather does not look very promising, we decide to leave our sheltered anchoring site and head on south towards our next destination. While looking out of our porthole on the high waves, another adventurer comes into my mind who exactly 140 years ago did the same trip under much less comfortable conditions than we. Nikolai Nikolaevich Miklouho-Maclay, a famous Russian explorer and adventurer, tried to reach Triton Bay in a nutshell of boat in 1874, under similar weather conditions. He also got into a heavy storm. In the middle of the night, when conditions had gone from bad to worse, he went on deck to find the steersman who was praying to Allah and had given up steering the boat at all. Miklouho-Maclay solved the problem in a very pragmatic way. He held his pistol to the steersman's head and forced him to take the wheel again and pray the next day. He was lucky. In the end, he reached Triton Bay some days later. We are also lucky, and after a very unpleasant and stormy night, we can make a trip to Momon waterfall, which from the jungle falls directly into the sea below. During the morning, we have visited the island of Khon, situated at the border of the drop-off to the Banda Sea, where the sea bottom falls down to more than 6,000 meters. We enjoy an excellent dive among huge schools of jacks. In the shallows, we meet a big squid searching for prey among the corals. Protected by the big island of Adi, we continue our journey and reach, after another night cruise, our destination, Triton Bay. We take advantage of the calm sea and the good weather to start our quadcopter for a short flight to get an overview on our present situation. All looks fine indeed. During the short tropical sunset, we make preparations for a first night dive in the bay. We meet the usual suspects. A parrotfish is hiding below a table coral, a moray eel looks out of its hole, and several species of squids and crabs are on their way. There are also some colorful nudibranchs around, which we spot with our underwater torches. One of them, a solar-powered species, uses the photosynthetic abilities of algae implanted in the tissue of the nudibranch to produce nutrients. Even a rare and very poisonous stonefish is lying between the corals. At last, even the walking shark shows up. It has lost its ability to swim and walks with its fins on the ground. This species was discovered only a few years ago. The next morning greets us with a bright sky, and we use the good weather for a discovery tour of the bay. The aerial view of the bay is breathtaking. We drive through narrow channels between small islands and penetrate deep into the fjord-like bays, where the green jungle stretches right to the water. There are still saltwater crocodiles around. They hide somewhere in the green underground close to the water. We are in search of the place where 140 years ago Miklouho-Maclay lived in his hut, always afraid of attacks by the locals. We only know from his diary that there was a long beach below the promontory where he lived, and he writes about a freshwater lagoon nearby. We sent our quadcopter into the sky several times in search of the right place from above. We discover a wonderful beach indeed, but somehow the surroundings do not fit in the rough sketch Miklouho-Maclay left us in his diary. A bit further, we make a disquieting discovery in a cave. Human bones and some skulls are lying on the ground or are placed decoratively in crevices in the cave and look upon us. In his diary, Miklouho-Maclay writes April 1874 about the strange customs of the locals. They dig up the dead and eat them. They very much like to eat the human brain. He also writes about frequent headhunts. Are these bones trophies, or is this cave only a traditional burying place? A short time later we are sure we have found the spot Miklouho-Maclay lived 140 years ago. His sketch fits into the landscape, and we even find the freshwater lagoon. Here on this promontory he lived in his hut with a spectacular view towards the vast Arafura Sea to the south. On April 2nd, 1874, he notes in his diary, "The victors were not satisfied with killing and wounding about a dozen people, but making certain that the wounds of the Raja of Aduma's wife were deadly, they cut her daughter into pieces. The cut-off head with part of the body and a dangling arm were stuck on a spear and triumphantly carried into the mountains." The underwater world we can enjoy remained a secret to Miklouho-Maclay. During our dives we meet huge schools of fish. Compared to Maclay's time, these schools are rather small. They must have been gigantic 140 years ago. However, he will have noticed the soft corals which grow here nearly up to the surface. In a crevice, we discover a typical shark of this region, a wobbegong. There are also many lionfish around, which seem to be more active in the afternoon before sunset. In the end, Miklouho-Maclay stayed only 3 months in Triton Bay. Always in fear of being attacked by the locals, he even moved for a short time to one of the islands at the entrance of the bay. But he didn't find shelter there either. A merchant from Makassar sailing by had mercy on him and eventually took him on his ship and brought him back to Ternate. Several thousand years before Miklouho-Maclay, other people have left traces on the rocky shores of Triton Bay. We return to our speedboats and search for them. On the white limestone walls, around 3 to 4 meters above the water, passing hunters and gatherers have left behind their drawings. Many motifs are foreign to us today. We discover pictures of crocodiles, fish, humans, and motifs which could be nets or fish traps. We still do not know the exact age of the drawings, but they must be very old, probably dating back from the time when the ancestors of the Aborigines from Australia travelled via New Guinea to Australia to settle on this continent. The descendants of these people still live on the shores of Triton Bay in simple wooden huts near the water. They cook their meals on open fires, sweet potatoes and yams directly in the ashes, and vegetables and fish in bamboo tubes.
Birds of paradise. I just said that they still do it. No. This is like
ini penting ada semua orang bisa main drum atau semua orang bisa main gini atau bapak saja yang atau beberapa orang. Sudah berapa lama main gini? Dari kecil.
Dari Goje. Ya bro, mana bro. Artinya ya
The friendly people lead us to the church and greet us with a welcome dance. Next to the village, in a bigger settlement, there's even a supermarket, and an obelisk reminds of a fruitless attempt of the Dutch to establish a fort here in the early 19th century. After 7 years, most of the Dutch soldiers had died of malaria, and the few survivors eventually returned to Batavia, leaving their dead comrades behind. Triton Bay is extremely rich in marine life. However, because of the inflow of fresh water from the mountains where rainfall is abundant, visibility is not always good. For the underwater videographer, these are not particularly favorable conditions. It is extremely difficult to portray an underwater landscape when the water is not perfectly clear. Though visibility is far from excellent, we are surprised by the high biodiversity and the good health of the reefs. Also, the fish do not seem to be shy. We can come very close, a clear sign that there are no fishing activities taking place here. Here nature can thrive still undisturbed. With one big exception, however. Except the wobbegongs and the odd blacktick passing by, there are no sharks to be seen. Even in this remote part of New Guinea, the shark finners have not left many predators behind. At least we see quite frequently giant groupers passing by. There are very few places in Indonesia where such huge specimens can be seen. Due to low visibility, we concentrate more on the little things. There are a lot of nudipranks around. They all carry their gills on the back. A damaged sea star puts us on the trace of two harlequin shrimps. They live quite secludedly and feed on sea stars, which they cut into pieces with their sharp scissors. We enjoy the diverse world underwater of Triton Bay before we have to go back on our ship and eventually from there many thousand kilometers back to Europe. Behind us we leave one of the last untouched underwater paradises of the world.